Three spine-chilling true stories exposed haunted tales of cursed lives, unexplained terrors. The soft glow of the evening sun cast long shadows over Willow Creek, where Sarah and Mark had just begun the dream of their new life. Their charming suburban house, with its red brick facade and white picket fence, felt like a fairy tale. As they unpacked boxes amidst laughter and cricket songs, Sarah couldn't shake a strange tightening in her chest. She brushed it off, convinced it was just the stress of moving. But the night whispered something different. Thud, thud, there it was, a faint scratching against the window. She froze, her heart racing, pulse drumming in her ears. It was just a tree branch, she told herself. It had to be. The comforting hum of the suburban landscape was suddenly eerie, shadows creeping in from the edges of her vision. Was something out there? During Mark's long hours at work, the strange occurrences intensified. Whispers danced through the halls as if the house itself was trying to speak, warning her. Shadows flickered beyond her sight. She was losing her mind, or was she? The boxes piled around her like walls closing in. One warm night, Sarah's unease spiraled. A knock at the door jolted her back. Mr. Thompson stood there, their charismatic neighbor, a genuine smile pulling at his lips. Yet something in his gaze lingered too long, a predatory glint. They exchanged pleasantries, but as he left, his smile twisted into a menacing shadow until he vanished into the gathering night. Then the police arrived. A frantic knock interrupted her thoughts as uniformed officers stood on her doorstep, eyes sharp. "Ma'am, we're investigating a series of disappearances in the neighborhood." Panic clawed at Sarah's throat. The names of the missing rolled off their tongues. Neighbors who had vanished without a trace sensed a chilling connection between their disappearances and Mr. Thompson. She needed to dig deeper. Each night dragged on. The whispers "I'm coming for you" taunted her as she found a small, overgrown patch of dirt in the backyard, unearthing old things, childhood toys, twisted roots, remnants of lives lost. She felt the weight of dark history pressing down. With every creak of the house, the suffocating sense of dread wrapped around her chest. Was she really safe here? That night, the sound of someone pushing against the door shattered the fragile veil of safety she had left. Terror gripped her. She grabbed her phone, and with trembling hands and racing heart, she approached the door. Flashes of light illuminated the hallway as she swung the door open. Mr. Thompson stood there, grin wider, eyes glinting with menace. "What's wrong, Sarah?" he purred, a slow, deliberate tone coating his words. She stumbled back, locking the door just as the headlights of Mark's car swept across the driveway. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The phone rang. With shaky breaths, she answered, and an all-too-familiar whisper echoed through the line. "I see you." Before she could scream, the lights flickered, plunging her into darkness. The air thickened with suspense as shadows coiled tighter around her, mocking her terror. Was Mr. Thompson the key to this nightmare? Or was it the house itself, harboring secrets darker than she could imagine? Caught in a paralyzing web of fear, she stood in the darkness, heart pounding. Would she take the leap and confront this dread, or let it consume her? Either way, the illusion of safety shattered. Horrifying truths trembled at the edge of her perception, truths waiting to unveil their insidious grip. The darkness pressed in, wrapping Sarah in its cold embrace. Each breath felt heavy, her heart hammering like a desperate warning bell. She edged along the wall, seeking the thin strip of light that spilled from the moon through the window. Something about this void stilled her body, but her mind raced thoughts of Mr. Thompson, the whispers, and the missing neighbors twisted together like a dark tapestry. Suddenly, the phone crackled back to life in her hand, chilling her further. "I see you." The voice was low, almost a purr, as if it was savoring her fear. She held her breath, pulse quickening again. Was the voice coming from the line or echoing from the shadows around her? Fumbling for the light switch, she prayed to cast away the darkness. Click. The bulbs flickered and then blazed back on, illuminating the room. But the relief was short-lived. The shadows danced wildly as if they had their own life, stretching and bending unnaturally across the room. "Sarah?" Mark's voice broke through the haze of her panic as he stepped inside, bewildered and confused. What's going on? She turned to him, eyes wide, dreading the thought of what she might say. It's Mr. Thompson. I think he knows. There are disappearances, Mark, but Mark stepped forward, his brow furrowed in concern. You've been under a lot of stress. It's just the move. Maybe we should take a break from unpacking? No, you don't understand. She grabbed his arm, desperation clawing at her voice. I found things in the yard, toys, and before she could finish, the room reverberated with a loud crash from outside. Mark dashed to the window, pulling back the curtain. What the hell? There's something out there. The moonlight spilled into the room, and panic erupted inside her. From the backyard, a fleeting outline seemed to retreat into the shadows, leaving only a soft rustling in its wake. Fear clutched at her throat. It was as if the darkness itself had something out there, a lingering presence hunting in the deeper shadows. Sarah. Mark turned back, his face pale. I think we need to call the police. The thought of the police sent a wave of nausea through her. Would they believe her? They'd only just left. Would they think she was crazy? Or worse, would they connect her with the frightening incidents? As she opened her mouth to speak, a dull thud resonated from the front of the house, jolting them both. Their gazes locked, a silent acknowledgement of the danger closing in. Stay close, Mark said, grabbing a kitchen knife from the counter. I'll check it out. No, don't leave me. Panic surged as he stepped toward the front door. But he stopped, looking back at her. I'll be right back. Just stay here. With each step he took, dread twisted in her gut. The shadows felt alive, creeping and shifting as if eager for their moment. Silence enveloped them, thick like fog, until a scrapping noise slithered around her. A voice like brittle leaves whispering. I'm coming for you. She buried her face in her hands. Why was this happening? Mark's silhouette vanished into the hallway, and she fell to her knees, feeling the hardwood cool against her skin. The edges of her sanity frayed as thoughts rolled through her mind. What if he doesn't come back? Then she heard it, the low, sinister chuckle, followed by a deep, resonant thud at the front door. Her heart plummeted as she glanced toward the hallway where Mark had disappeared. Mark. No answer. The chilling realization twisted her stomach. That malevolent chuckle was all too familiar, Mr. Thompson's voice. She scrambled to her feet, paralyzed by fear. What was happening? Was she meant to be next? A shadow crossed the light from the window, a figure standing just within reach of the door. Let me in, Sarah. It's safe. You know it now. The air turned electric with dread. Without thinking, Sarah bolted into the kitchen, adrenaline propelling her forward. She had to find Mark. She had to escape. But outside, a faint whisper beckoned her back, echoing in her mind. You can't hide from me. I'm already inside. The door shuddered, and her heart raced. Could she confront her fears and face what was waiting for her? Or would she let the encroaching darkness swallow her whole? The night held secrets, and as the shadows crept in, the choice loomed before her, dangerously close. What would she decide? Sarah raced through the kitchen, hands shaking as she fumbled for the door that led to the basement. She glanced back at the entrance, heart thrumming wildly. What if Mark returned? What if he didn't? She steeled herself and opened the basement door, its creak dragging through the stillness like fingernails on a chalkboard. The air was cooler down the stairs, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, something putrid. With shaky breaths, she descended, pausing at the first step. The whispering had started again, wrapping around her like a noose. I see you, Sarah. You're so fearful. No, she yelled, her voice reverberating off the walls. Leave me alone. Her words faded into the emptiness. The darkness seemed to clutch at her feet, eager to pull her deeper into obscurity. Heart racing, she pressed onward, the single bulb dangling from the ceiling casting an eerie glow. At the bottom, she hesitated. The basement was littered with relics of the past. Old furniture, boxes tipped over, and a chilling feeling that clung to her skin. Was it wrong to hide down here? Her instincts screamed at her to turn back, but a darker notion gripped her, spurred on by the echoes of fading laughter above. "Mark?" she called, voice breaking. No answer came, only the relentless whisper. Suddenly, she noticed something. A small, wooden trunk stationed in the corner, its edges peeling and the locks rusted shut. Drawing closer, she could see symbols etched into the surface like something out of a nightmare. Pressing her palm against the trunk, a violent shock shot through her, paralyzing her for an instant. "Open it," the sinister voice purred, wrapping around her thoughts. "No," she breathed, stepping back, but it was too late. Compelled as if by an unseen force, she reached for the lid, her fingers brushing against the cold wood. Before she could act, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the upper floor. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Could it be Mark? Or something much worse? The footsteps thudded loudly, closer and closer, then stopped just above her head. Seconds stretched endlessly, filled with a suffocating silence. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, fighting against the oppressive quiet. The voice came again, now mocking. "He'll never find you down here." Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from above, sending vibrations through the floor. Sarah jumped, the trunk rattling against her. She could not ignore the swell of dread rising within her. She needed to know what was happening up there, but her entire being screamed for her to remain hidden. Cursing under her breath, she took a step back toward the stairs. Yet her gaze fell back to the trunk, practically glowing in the dim light. Would opening it reveal help, or would it unlock something far worse? The blood in her veins turned to ice as the darkness shifted in the corners, something sinister expanding its reach. She was trapped in a nightmare of her own making. "Mark," she shouted again, her voice cracking. A whisper followed, taunting. "He can't hear you." She felt her sanity bend as the shadows danced above, and panic surged like a wild current. With a frantic glance upward, she made a decision, her breath hitching. It was now or never. She had to know what was inside that trunk. The truth lay within, and if she didn't face it, it might consume her whole. As she reached again, the door rattled, fingers gripping on the other side. "Sarah, are you down there?" The voice. "Mark." Relief washed over her. But as she pried the trunk open, the air turned electric. A hollow darkness erupted from within, swirling and twisting like smoke, and her hand froze in place. As it billowed outwards, she locked eyes with the immense shadow forming from the depths. And in that moment, she knew the true horror had only just begun. "Sarah." Mark's voice seemed to fade, swallowed by a wave of southern dread. With a shriek, the shadow lunged. The echoes of terror filled the basement, leaving Sarah teetering on the brink of oblivion. In that heart-stopping instant, she had to summon the strength to combat the darkness that had consumed her life. Would Mark get to her in time? Or would that consuming shadow claim its next victim? The answer loomed dangerously close as the night throbbed with impending chaos. The darkness erupted, a viscous mass that glided toward her like a predator understanding its prey. Sarah's breath hitched as the shadows twisted, lashing out with long, claw-like tendrils made of pure dread. She staggered back, fear and an instinct to survive battling within her. "Mark," she cried again, desperate and raw. The shadows flickered, darting closer with insatiable hunger. Each step seemed to rob her of breath, the air thick like wet wool. Would he hear her? "Sarah." His voice was clearer now, laced with urgency. But each syllable only further fueled the terror wrapping around her. The pulsating darkness writhed, whispering blasphemies. "Stay, I'll keep you safe." No. She had to resist. In that moment, clarity pierced through the veil of fear. She couldn't give in. She had to fight. Summoning every ounce of defiance, she turned and sprinted towards the stairs. But the shadows lunged faster, snaking around her legs with icy tendrils. "Sarah," it hissed, the voice an amalgam of all her worst fears. "Stay with me forever." With a surge of determination, Sarah clawed free from the grasping darkness. She stumbled, falling forward onto the first step, scrabbling to propel herself upward. The chilling laughter echoed behind her, filling the basement, mocking her determination. Just as she reached for the door, it slammed shut with a thunderous crack, the wood vibrating with malevolent energy. Panic clawed harder at her throat. She banged her fists against the solid surface, the relentless grasp of the shadow pushing her back. "Mark!" she screamed, desperation painting her voice with terror. "Hold on," he shouted, the door rattling violently as he fought from the other side. She could hear the panic in his breaths, could sense that he was trying to break through. The darkness, however, didn't care. It expelled a growl that reverberated through the basement, shaking the air around her like a malevolent storm. She felt it coiling around her once more, an icy embrace that seeped into her bones. It threatened to pull her into the abyss. "You're mine," the voice whispered, sweet on the tongue, tasting of despair. Just then, the door flew open, light spilling in and mixing with the dark shadows like oil and water. Mark stood there, eyes wide, panic etched on his face. "Sarah, get out." He reached for her, but the darkness reacted violently, snapping toward him with an otherworldly shriek. "You'll pay for this intrusion," it howled, and the shadows moved like a living creature, lunging towards Mark. "Run!" Sarah shouted, ignoring the icy fingers that dug into her. She leaped toward Mark, desperate to escape together. He gripped her wrist, pulling her out of the grasp of the shadows that roiled and twisted in a furious frenzy. They tumbled back into the kitchen, breathless and frantic, but the sensation of safety was fleeting. The shadows surged around the basement door, thumping against the frame as if trying to break back through. When would it stop? "Did you see it?" Mark's voice trembled, disbelief washing over him. "What was that thing?" His eyes darted around, searching for an escape. It wanted me," she stuttered, a tremor racing through her. "We have to leave. Now." But as they turned to flee, a heavy silence fell over the house. The shadows still whispered, a sinister promise lingering in the air. The pulse of malignity hung heavier, a wave waiting to crest. "What if it follows us?" Sarah breathed, terror gripping her tighter than before. "We can't think like that," Mark insisted, eyes flaring with fire. "We have to find a way to get rid of it once and for all." She glanced back toward the basement door, dread curling in her stomach. Whatever that darkness was, they hadn't seen the last of it. As Mark grabbed her hand and they made their way toward the front door, the lights flickered ominously, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "You will never be free," they stopped dead, dread settling in their bones as they faced the gathering shadows. The night had only just begun, and this was only a taste of the horrors yet to come. Would they find a way to escape its grasp, or would the malevolent force consume them both? Clarity dimmed, and the darkness smiled, determined to take what was rightfully its own. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, drowning out the whispers that clawed at her sanity. She and Mark stood frozen, shadows swirling around their feet, inching closer, thirsting for their fear. "Do you have a plan?" His voice was steadier than his trembling hands, but she could see the flicker of dread in his eyes. "Anything but staying here," she snapped, adrenaline surging as the oppressive weight of darkness seemed to swell around them. They had to move now. Mark raised his chin, determination flickering like a candle in the night. "Let us check the back door," he said, pulling her toward the kitchen exit. They bolted toward the door at the back of the house, the shadows creeping behind them, hissing promises of despair. Almost there, but the door wouldn't budge. "Come on." Mark jerked the handle, his frustration mixing with fear. They pounded against the surface, panic spilling from their lungs. "It's locked," Sarah gasped, her breath hitching. Then, a sound like distant laughter echoed through the house, crawling beneath her skin and sinking ice into her veins. "You can't escape me," the voice taunted, wrapped in thick malevolence. No way." Mark turned to her, eyes wide. "What is it doing to us?" "It's feeding on our fear," she shouted back, the truth piercing through the hysteria. The shadows were alive, a sentient horror that thrived on their terror. "Then we need to fight." His voice trembled, half from fear and half from determination. "What do we do?" Thoughts raced through Sarah's mind, colliding like storm clouds. "We need light." "Light?" Mark echoed, distracted by another tremor of laughter that rippled through their surroundings. The basement. There were flashlights. She shouted, realizing that the very place they feared had tools for survival. If only they could reach it. Are you crazy? We just came from there, Mark argued, but the determination in her eyes was undeniable. The shadows were converging, pressing against their souls. They shared a single glance, a moment of understanding. Then they were racing back through the kitchen as they approached the basement door. They could hear the muffled whispers intensifying, turning into a cacophony of chaos with every step forward. She pushed Mark aside and flung the door open, the darkness bubbling wildly, reaching out as though it had a physical form. "Grab the flashlights," Sarah shouted. She dashed past the writhing shadows, ignoring the way they nipped at her heels. Mark followed, a shout of alarm spilling from his lips as the darkness retaliated, sending a wave of cold that struck them both. The air crackled, and Sarah's skin prickled painfully. Shadows swirled high on the walls, mocking them. "You think you can win?" they whispered, gaining strength as the light flickered dimly from the bulging remnants of reality. Guided by instinct, Sarah sprinted to the corner where she remembered the tools being stored, her fingers fumbling over the familiar textures. She grabbed a flashlight, fumbling for the switch in her trembling hands. "Mark, hurry!" The shadows were gaining, coiling firmly around him, trying to drag him back. He reached for a flashlight too, and in a frantic moment, they turned their lights toward the approaching darkness. Blinding beams shot through the air. Shadows shrieked, retracting, hissing in agony. But it was not gone, merely pushing back, swirling in a storm of anger. A potent threat transforming into something even more powerful. "You think this will save you?" it shrieked, vibrating the very essence of the air. As their lights flickered defiantly, a realization dawned on Sarah. It's not just afraid of the light she breathed, a terrified conviction washing over her. "Needs our fear." "What do you mean?" Mark questioned, panic seeping back into his voice. What if, she faltered, hesitation gripping her heart. What if we confront it? Show no fear? At that moment, the detestable darkness lunged again, swamping the light and tightening its fingers around Sarah. The fear she felt, thick as honey, wafted toward the shadows like a sweet aroma, mingling with the cold dread, enveloping her. Could they really contest the very embodiment of their fears? The shadows pressed against them, but Sarah felt something flicker inside her, a tiny ember of bravery igniting. "Do it!" Mark's voice broke through, lending her strength. They held their flashlights high, standing together against the encroaching darkness. And then they yelled, voices trembling with defiance, "We are not afraid," echoing into the void that surrounded them. But what would that proclamation cost them? The shadows twisted, pulsing violently, and for an instant, the basement fell silent. A heartbeat of stillness before the storm. And in that moment, they realized this was only the beginning. What awaited them next could shatter their very sanity. The silence was suffocating. A heavy blanket draped over them, pressing in, making it hard to breathe. The darkness swirled, pulsing as if alive, calculating. Sarah and Mark stood rigid under their faltering lights, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They had shattered the oppressive stillness with their defiance, and now they felt the weight of inevitability creeping closer. "What's happening?" Mark's question hung in the air, a raw edge of desperation cutting through the silence. A low rumble echoed, a growl that vibrated through the floorboards beneath their feet. Shadows stretched, blossoming like black flowers, reaching toward them with spindly fingers. Sarah clenched her jaw, every instinct screaming to flee, but she held her ground, desperate to protect Mark and herself from whatever horror awaited them. The lights flickered, and the shadows twisted faster. "Stay together," she gasped, as a chasm of fear opened wide inside her. "What if it's stronger than us?" Mark said, his eyes darting to the swirling black. "What if we're not enough?" "Then we fight harder," she replied, her voice barely a whisper, but strong like steel. She tightened her grip on the flashlight. Just then, a wave of cold washed over them, icy fingers trailing against their skin as the shadows hissed. Their voices a chilling chorus. "We'll take you. You're ours." "No," Sarah shouted, the word escaping her lips like a battle cry. "We won't let you." She unleashed a beam of light, aiming deep into the darkness, igniting the void that a fractured cry erupted, raw and tormented, and the shadows shrank back momentarily, shriveling in the light's wake. But the aftermath was just as powerful. The darkness recoiled with a vengeance, ramping up its assault. The chilling laughter returned, mocking their fight, filled with contempt for their defiance. "You think you win with your bright lights? You're only feeding me more." Cold terror seized Sarah's heart. Mark stumbled back, momentarily losing his footing. "Sarah, it's getting worse. We need to get out now." "Not yet," she insisted, her resolve hardening. "We can't." The basement doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. The sound echoed like a death knell, sending chills racing down Sarah's spine. Their only exit sealed, leaving them completely at the mercy of this horror. Mark wrenched at the door handle, panic flashing across his face. As it's locked tight, he let out a choked sob, eyes wild and filled with fear. "Think," Sarah shouted, her voice strained. "They couldn't give in. Couldn't let despair sink its claws into them." She turned back to the shadows, standing with renewed certainty. "What is it you want?" "You," the shadows hissed, a cacophony of voices intertwining. "Your fear and your souls. Then you'll have to take us both." Sarah's heart raced as she faced the darkness. "Because we're not afraid." In an instinctive motion, she swung the flashlight wide, illuminating the corners of the basement. The cold stone walls pulsated with darkness. The air vibrated around them, thick and electric. As the shadows faltered, the ground shook beneath them, tremors rippling through the floor. Mark stepped up beside her, and together their lights merged into a brilliant cross of beams. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, adrenaline taking control. They started to back toward a shadowy corner, where she sensed a change. A way out might lurk within the oppressive void. Suddenly, she spotted a glimmer, a rusty old door partially concealed by the darkness. "There," she pointed urgently, fear and hope colliding in her chest like the crack of thunder. "Is it safe?" Mark asked, uncertainty gnawing at him. "Safe or not, it's our only chance." With the shadows closing in again, they turned their path toward the door, light beams like swords cutting through the chaos. But right as they reached for the knob, an overwhelming gust blew through the basement, extinguishing their flashlights in a heartbeat. A darkness so complete closed in around them, wrapping like ice around their bodies. "Your defiance," the shadows taunted softly, suffocating, "will only make it worse." The world around them faded, and Sarah screamed, a cry of pure panic, as the abyss swallowed them into silence. Would they find light in the heart of the looming darkness, or would they lose themselves forever in its insatiable hunger? The world returned with a jolt, sharp and cold. Sarah gasped, her lungs filling with the musty air of the basement. She blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of where she was. The darkness had receded but not vanished. Shadows clung to the edges like a predator waiting for the right moment to pounce. "Mark," she croaked, her voice hoarse. Panic constricted her throat. "Mark, here." His shaky reply echoed, a promise in the dimness. She turned toward him, her heart racing again as she stumbled through the brackish gloom. Relief surged as her eyes found his, but it quickly transformed into dread when she saw the fear etched on his face. They were no longer near the door. The basement had warped, transformed in ways that twisted her stomach. Instead of an exit, they stood before a cavernous abyss, a gaping maw of shadow that seemed to swallow all light and hope. "What happened?" Mark whispered, skin pale and trembling. "I don't know." The door Sarah swallowed hard. "We have to keep moving." She raised her hands, shaping her resolve into an invisible shield against the encroaching blackness. Without the flashlights, they delved deeper into the basement's treacherous terrain, the dampness seeping into their clothes, chilled like the fear curling in their chests. Sarah felt her heart thud like a war drum, echoing in the silence that settled heavily around them. A new sound washed over them, a soft whisper that flickered at the edges of her consciousness. It was a voice familiar but indecipherable slithering through the gloom. She couldn't pinpoint its origin, but her instincts screamed, pushing her to move. "Can you hear that?" Mark asked, his voice trembling. Sarah nodded, but her eyes were wide, darting. The whispers intensified, layering over one another like many faint cries stitching a ghastly quilt. It was a lullaby of torment. She clenched her fists, ready to run, but an unseen force held them in place. "Stay, we want you to stay," the shadows purred, a chilling sweetness that dripped into their ears like honey coated in venom. "No," Sarah shouted, the word bursting from her throat as if it were a talisman. "We want to be yours." But the pit of darkness shuddered, and she felt a ripple of laughter beneath her skin, creeping and curling like tendrils of smoke, wrapping around her as if trying to reach her soul. "We'll give you peace," the shadows promised, every syllable coated with malice. "Eternal peace if you join us." "Join you?" Mark's voice was a fragile thread in the suffocating darkness. "You mean death?" the darkness sang, silky and inviting. "We'll take away your pain, your fear, all the things that burden you." As the whispers battered their will, Sarah's resolve was tested. Yes, they had faced fear together, but this was the seductive embrace of oblivion, and it swirled around them, threatening to consume her. "Mark, fight it. Don't listen," she urged, reaching out to grab his arm. In that moment of contact, something unexpected happened. A flicker of light, soft but palpable, surged from their joined hands, crackled and buzzed, pushing the shadows back a fraction. The darkness recoiled, hissing in unison again. "You dare fight? This is just the beginning." Terror flooded Sarah's senses. They needed to harness that spark. They needed to give it strength. "Remember who we are," Sarah shouted, focusing on the pulse of hope that surged in her chest. "We're not alone." Mark nodded, his features clenching with a mix of panic and determination. "Together," he cried. Together they steeled themselves against the darkness, a flicker against the oppressive void. But the shadows howled, a cacophony of voices warning them, threatening to tear them apart. "You will regret this, don't resist." Without warning, the basement trembled again, a surge of energy, as if the very foundation of their reality began to fracture. "What's happening?" Mark yelled, his voice swallowed in the chaos. The walls around them rippled. The path was becoming clearer, but the shadows were closing in fast. Would they seize their chance and find a way out, or would the darkness finally claim them? Panic spiraled inside Sarah. There was no choice left but to plunge forward into the unknown. In the blur of swirling black, a single figure emerged, a silhouette against the tide of shadows. Was it friend or foe? Fear gripped her heart tightly as she stepped closer, drawn towards the figure's chilling presence. The figure stepped forward, revealing a gaunt face framed by tattered hair, eyes sunken and hollow. Sarah's breath caught as the resemblance struck her like a lightning bolt. It was a sister she thought lost to the void of memory, a sister whose name danced just out of reach, but whose presence ignited a whirlwind of emotions. "Anna?" she whispered, dread clawing at her insides. The figure smiled, a twisted mockery of affection. "You were always the stronger one, Sarah. But it's time to embrace the darkness." Anna's voice was hypnotic, weaving in and out of Sarah's thoughts like a siren's call. "I found peace here. You can too if you join us." "Join you?" Sarah's voice crackled with disbelief. "You're not Anna. You're just a ghost, a trick." "No trick." The shadows cried in unison, their tones merging with Anna's, each syllable a dagger meant to pry open her defenses. "We are all lost souls, Sarah, waiting for you. Come." There's so much to gain. Mark squeezed her arm tighter, grounding her amidst the chaos. "Don't listen. It's not real," he shouted over the cacophony of whispers, desperation pouring from him. But Sarah felt the weight of her sister's words pulling her down, deeper into a pit of despair. Flashbacks of their childhood flooded through her mind, laughter echoing in sunlit rooms, warm hugs before bedtime. For a brief moment, she wanted to surrender to that memory, to have it back, even if it meant stepping into the darkness. "Sarah, fight it!" Mark shouted, breaking through the haze. "Remember what we have. We have each other." In that moment, a flicker of rebellion ignited within her. "Anna, I can't do this. I want tea." The malevolent shadows shrieked with fury, the air thickening as they shrank back, recoiling from her defiance like snakes driven away by light. But they were clever and relentless, and the whispers grew louder, drowning her resolve. "You'll forget all pain, too much sorrow. Just stop fighting." She looked deeply into her sister's vacant eyes, trying to see what she had once been. All she found was darkness. "No." Her voice rang out defiantly, as she took a single step backward. "I refuse to become part of this nightmare." But the figure lunged forward, reaching toward her with desperate, skeletal fingers. The air around them crackled with energy, a tumult of hopes and regrets tangling in the swirling shadows. Mark stood firm beside her, summoning every ounce of courage. "We're moving forward, Sarah, together." With a sudden surge of strength, fueled by the determination that bloomed in their hands, they began to push the darkness back further still. The light from their grasp pulsed, brightening the path, illuminating the cavernous abyss around them. Yet just when it felt like escape was within reach, the shadows roared, their howls a tempest that threatened to swallow them anew. In that instant, the ground beneath them shivered violently, cracks spreading like spider webs throughout their surroundings. A form rose behind Anna, a colossal silhouette, cloaked in dark mist. It unfurled, revealing a horrific visage that defied humanity's eyes, endless voids, and a mouth that twisted into an impossibly wide grin, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Foolish child," it bellowed, its voice like the grinding of stone. "You cannot escape me." The terror in Sarah's chest flared anew. "We're not afraid anymore," she cried, but the shadows writhed closer, hungry and insatiable, with every desperate beat of her heart. She could feel the darkness pressing in, a growing threat that tempted her with promises of safety. Should she push forward into the light or be consumed by the familiar embrace of shadows? As the ground crumbled beneath them, a sudden realization struck. The figure beside her wasn't just Anna, it was a manifestation of her own fears and doubts. Fighting back the tide of despair, she narrowed her focus, clinging to Marcus' presence. "We'll break free. We just need to believe." Clenching his hand tighter, they lunged towards the unknown, desperate to escape before the maw of shadows swallowed them whole. But the figure raised a hand, the darkness rippling at its command. "Stay, we'll be waiting." A burst of light ignited a path ahead, illuminating the way out. But as they raced toward it, the laughter of shadows echoed around them, a chilling reminder of the horrors left behind. Would the light be strong enough to cut through the approaching darkness? The shadows surged forward, their claws reaching, twisting a chaotic storm of thoughts spilling into Sarah's mind. Just as they were about to cross into the light, a final terrifying whisper curled around them, leaving Sarah with one haunting question. What if they weren't meant to escape at all? They surged forward, hearts pounding, a desperate effort to flee the horror closing in. The light flickered, a thin thread rescuing them from being swallowed whole. But doubt gnawed at the edges of Sarah's mind. Anna's twisted smile, the shadow behind her, those were her fears given form. Was there a way to fight that which was born from within? A chorus of laughter echoed behind them, reverberating with malice. It fed on their fear, clawing at the edges of their sanity. "You think you can leave?" It sneered, the voice deep and mocking, filled with the cacophony of 100 lost souls. "Focus, Sarah. Just keep running," Mark shouted, pulling her along as the dim light seemed to pulse with every fearful thought they had. They dashed forward, skidding to a halt at the precipice of an ancient stone archway, its surface slick with shadows. The archway promised escape, but it felt like stepping into a giant's maw. Dread settled over them like a thick fog. The choice was suddenly tangible: remain in the grip of chaos or leap into the unknown. "Do we dare?" Mark's voice was barely a whisper, uncertainty cloaking him in its chill. "We have to." Sarah felt strength coursing through her despite the fear that threatened to topple her. They had fought too hard to back down now. As they took a step past the threshold, the shadows surged, twisting in a wild frenzy, trying to reel them back. Stay. You belong with us. The shrieks clawed at them, whispering dark promises, recounting secrets they had long buried so deep. Shut them out. Sarah screamed, the air thick with the tempest of voices. They're lying. She ran faster, with Mark right on her heels. The brightness ahead grew, pulsing like a heartbeat. Could the light hold against the encroaching tide? Suddenly, spectral hands grasped at their ankles, drawing them down. Its icy grip sent shockwaves of terror coursing through Sarah. She stumbled, gasping as memories, shards of regret, failure, loss flooded her mind. Don't give in. Keep running. Mark's shout pierced the veil of darkness, empowering her resolve. Hand in hand, they pushed against the tide, each step like running through molasses as fear threatened to drag them under. Behind them, the shadowed figure of Anna leaned forward, stretching her emaciated hand. Come back, Sarah. You'll see. This is where you belong. You always wanted to be with me. There was a flicker of something, longing, but the truth twisted like a knife. She was being manipulated, used as a vessel for fear. No, enough, she yelled, rage filling her. I refuse. The ground roared, cracking deeper as if the very abyss groaned at her defiance. They propelled themselves through the darkness, legs like lead, determination crumbling in the face of such overpowering sorrow. As they crossed the threshold, a blinding flash erupted, sending waves of brilliance to push the shadows back. A physical shock that rattled her bones. But with it came a vertigo, and Sarah lost her grip on Marcus' hand. Sarah. His panicked voice echoed above the turmoil, desperately clawing through the darkness that closed in on her. The light dimmed as he faded, his face a mask of terror. The shadows enveloped them, seizing her mind. Help! No! The levity of his voice snapped Sarah back. She wasn't alone. He was here, held by memories, by the heart of her childhood that glimmered still despite the darkness. Mark. She reached for him, panic surging. But a searing force pulled her back, tugging her toward the swirling abyss, yearning for a soul to consume. The laughter echoed once again, a sound that resonated deep within, a promise of the pain that awaited if she surrendered. The darkness writhed, pressing close, almost suffocating. Fight it, Sarah. Remember us our life. But could she? Did she know what lay on the other side of the light? As she clung to hope, the maw opened wider, revealing its jagged teeth, beckoning her into eternal silence. Just as the darkness threatened to swallow her whole, something flickered, a whisper against her fears, a chance for redemption, a longing to be free. Would she dare reach for it? Everything hinged on that moment. The shadows shivered, and the ground dropped beneath her feet. And in that split second, she had to decide. Could she save Mark, or had she already lost him forever? The terrifying chaos erupted around them, the shadows ripping at her clothes like fierce winds. Sarah felt her heart hammer against her ribs, a relentless drumbeat echoing in her ears. This was the moment when all her fears coalesced into a terrifying black maw, ready to swallow her whole. Could she break free, pull Mark back into the light? Sarah. His voice broke through the madness, desperation tinged with fear. Don't give up. She clenched her teeth, forcing herself to think through the fog wrapping around her mind. With her hand outstretched to him, she felt a spark surge, a sliver of hope igniting her resolve. Mark, hold on. But the shadows surged forward again, clawing at her with icy fingers, wrapping her in despair. She blinked against the frantic, swirling darkness, shifting her focus back to the pulsing light ahead. Together they had faced the abyss and come back. Together they would escape. Stay strong, she shouted, grounding her voice with every ounce of willpower. The darkness hissed, angry at their defiance, thrashing wildly in retaliation. You cannot escape. You belong to us, to the darkness. No, was her rallying cry. We will not be taken. Marcus' face grew clearer, unwavering and determined through the chaos. They had to believe in their endurance. With a guttural cry of defiance, Sarah lunged forward, refusing to look back. She felt the weight of fear lift slightly when she grasped for Marcus' hand, their fingers intertwining with fierce determination. Together, they shouted in unison. The shadows recoiled, but they would not relent. As they pressed on, adrenaline coursed through their veins. They dashed almost seamlessly into the light, the warmth enveloping them with sudden brightness. But just as they neared the threshold of salvation, the terrifying laughter echoed around them, chilling their bones and grasping at their hearts. "You cannot leave." The dark figure loomed large, wrapping itself around them, whispering echoes of despair that threatened to claw them down once more. "Embrace the peace we offer." "No." Mark's voice rang out with strength. "We are not afraid of you. We will not fall for your lies." "Shut up," Sarah screamed, the heat of her words igniting a furious blaze of emotion within her. She couldn't let the shadows win. With a final push, she squeezed Mark's hand, their resolve together a fortress against the encroaching darkness. The ground shook violently beneath them, but they didn't slow. The light shimmered ahead like a beacon, drawing them in close enough to touch. "Almost there," she chanted, willing every part of her body to move. 1, 2, 3. They leapt together, like birds breaking free from a cage. Light burst forth, engulfing them in a radiant glow, bullets of brightness piercing through the overwhelming shadows. The sensation cracked through her like electricity. The darkness screamed, howled, echoed a horrific farewell, as the light exploded around them like fireworks. Moments later, they landed with a thud onto cool grass, stretching and gasping, the darkness falling away like mist. Muffled cries of rage drifted into the night as Sarah and Mark scrambled to their feet. They were alive, released from the horrors of Willow Creek. Panting, Sarah looked around, disbelief blooming alongside relief. They were outside, the moonlight casting a serene glow over their home, the very one that had turned into a nightmare. But it wasn't just relief. It was clearness. No longer would they be ruled by fear. The shadow of Mr. Thompson hung heavy over the neighborhood, and she knew others could still be in danger. "Mark, we can't just leave. The people, this is not over." "I know," he breathed, grasping her shoulders tightly. "But together, we can figure it out." "You're right. If we can confront our fears, we can help them. We owe it to them." As the first light of dawn threaded through the trees, Sarah felt it a quiet confidence. They wouldn't just run from the dark. Not anymore. They would confront it and protect their community. Hand in hand, they turned towards the sunset-kissed horizon, a promise of something better, a chance to heal the scars of the past. Together. "Ready?" Mark asked, a spark of determination flickering in his eyes. "Ready." As they stepped forward into the unknown, they carried the weight of courage against the approaching shadows. The darkness would come again, but they would face it, whatever had to come next. Because together, they were unbreakable. And that shining thought pushed them onward, into the new beginning. Now, it's your turn. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of showing support.